Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. You know, we cover other content than sports wagering. I don't know if those of you maybe just watching NewsWire, you have no idea. We do fantasy sports every Saturday morning and Sunday morning. And the two sports we cover predominantly, let's be honest, are football during the football season and baseball during the baseball season. And since we're in the middle of the fantasy baseball season and closing in on football season, we thought it'd be a good time to bring in Joe Pisapia to talk some Major League Baseball and maybe some fantasy as well. We'll mix it up. Joe's with me here now on the show. I've hosted with Joe on and off. I mean, it's 20 years? Is it 20? It's definitely 10.
It's 15.
Is it 20?
It's Ben Affleck and J-Lo and you and me. We're right there neck and neck. That's where we are.
15 years. That's crazy, man. That is crazy. 15 years having kids and all this other stuff has just flown by. So, but anyway, nobody's interested in that. They're like, who are these two schmoes talking? I want to hear some fantasy talk. All right. So let's start off with, the fantasy asset and, the baseball asset is a pitcher on the Los Angeles Dodgers. And I'm not even going to give a name out here. It's like if any pitcher pitches for the Dodgers, you want them in a fantasy league because what you want to do is pick them up because you know that they're going to win a lot of games. That's kind of gone well, Joe, this year for some, not as well for others. What do you think has happened here?
Well, it's gone well for Tyler Glasnow, who's been terrific, and it's also gone very well for Gavin Stone, which, if you asked me a month ago, in fact, on FST on Sunday mornings, we had discussed, Matt Stryker and I, with the looming returns of Bobby Miller and Clayton Kershaw, theoretically, that maybe it was time to start kicking the tires on some trades for Gavin Stone. But what's happened now is you have the issue with the shoulder for Clayton Kershaw. You have Walker Buehler going on the IL for a hip problem, which really is the problem of his ERA, which is very heavy for him to hold right now. I think that's putting some strain on the hip personally, but we could talk about that another time. And then, of course, Bobby Miller's return, which has been less than thrilling. Yamamoto hurt now. So Landon Knack has gotten opportunities again. You've also got a situation where now Gavin Stone has a lot of opportunities to stick in this rotation. I think he's going to have a lot of outs, as we would say, in the poker game. And I think that Gavin Stone is a guy right now, you look at his hitting totals, probably around 125 career high. He could probably push into that 140, 150 mark this year, theoretically, from a fantasy standpoint. So that becomes a really good situation because now all of a sudden you're asking Yamamoto, Kershaw, Miller, and Walker Buehler to all be healthy and all be good down the stretch. Now, could the Dodgers go out there and make another move? Of course they could. They're the Dodgers. Yeah. They're going to be in some competition with the Yankees, though, if this rotation continues going the way it has. What are we up to? 12 earned runs here in the last two games for Heel. Something like 20 earned runs in the last three games for Carlos Rodon, and we all know what happened to Garrett Cole against the New York Mets this week. So the Yankees and the Dodgers, these two teams at the forefront, certainly have every reason to be looking in the open market for pitching potentially, as there is definitely some concern, I think, with the velocity of Garrett Cole. There's definitely concern with the innings of Heel. And then on the Dodger side of things, too, now you've got these two big market teams competing in that open space for the available pitchers. And if it's the Garrett Crochets of the world, or some other pitchers potentially who could be out there in the market, it's going to be fascinating to see what that cost ends up becoming. Because whenever you have two big dogs in this market fighting it out, all of a sudden they could be basically outbidding each other. But Stone, I think, is the beneficiary. He's a guy that's going to stick in this rotation. As you said, he's going to have some really good value down the stretch. So if people are worried about the innings, I would be less so. I'd be buying Gavin Stone if he had the opportunity.
Yeah, and I think 2 points with that. The first point is that you mentioned two names, Kershaw, Buehler. I mean, at this point, no counting on them to come back or even being effective. So I definitely buy that. The other funny part is that you mentioned one name in Garrett Crochet, and it's like if I needed you to name five others, not that you couldn't, but you shouldn't, because every team is still in it right now in Major League Baseball. There's like three teams out, and everybody else is still like fighting for this right now. It's really hard to decipher who's going to be selling at the deadline. For 4 or 5 teams for sure. I probably think that's it. Okay, let's get to one of the rookies in the American League, Wyatt Langford, who going into the season was the highly projected rookie of the year in the AL. And if you didn't take Langford, you took, of course, Jackson Holiday. And neither of those guys, I don't think, are going to win the rookie of the year. What do you make of the season for Langford?
Well, I wouldn't quite put a pin in Wyatt Langford yet. Maybe Jackson Holiday, that's perfectly fine. But Langford's intriguing. I know you look at these overall numbers and they're not really exciting. But if you look at the last 55 at-bats for him, he's hitting .291 with a .350 OBP and a .473 slugging. Now that is more exciting. He's also got 5 stolen bases, 2 home runs over that span. if you dial back to last year around this time, Gunnar Henderson was the guy who actually ended up winning the American League Rookie of the Year. People wanted to drop him from their fantasy leagues in May. In the month of April, he had a $189. In the month of May, he had a .213 batting average. His OPS never got over 750 in those 2 months. Then he turned it on the month of June, had terrific July, August, September, and that's all anyone remembers. And as Luis Gil has hit this innings wall, Wyatt Langford is a really intriguing piece. He's so intriguing, Craig. If you look this morning, he is down to plus 600 for this award in a lot of markets. Now, that number 2 weeks ago, when I talked about it on FST, was plus 2,500. That is an enormous leap because I think the market's looking at it and saying, hey, everyday players have a better spot at this award potentially. You're also talking about Gil maybe being sent down to become a 3-inning pitcher, maybe going to the bullpen. Either of those scenarios are bad for him for this award. And we're prisoners of the moment. We end up paying attention a lot more to how players finish than how they started the year. And as great as Gil has been, he's been the favorite for this award, and rightfully so. What's happened here now with Wyatt Langford starting to get healthy, starting to get hot, if he maintains this pace and goes on a run like Henderson did last year, you could very well see this late burning Rookie of the Year once again in the American League. So it's still a good value, plus 600 at 2,400 to 600 in 2 weeks. That's something to circle and realize that the market's starting to turn.
All right, a minute left. A month ago, if we had the NL Rookie of the Year discussion, it was Shota Imanaga and everybody else. Now it's Paul Skeens and everybody else. That's not to say that Skeens won't win it, Joe. But at the same time, we need to recognize that this is sports. These are human beings. And you mentioned Langford. Is there another player on this list for NL Rookie of the Year? Do you think that can beat out Skeens?
Merrill's had a great month, but at the end of the year, I think the hype around Skeens will carry a certain amount unless Imanaga carries the Cubs to the playoffs. That might be a different story.
Yeah. Joe Pisapia, great fantasy analyst, even better cook. When the recipe book comes out, folks, along with the fantasy black book, you got to buy them both. Joe, have a good weekend. Thanks for coming on.